Okay, so today's topic is about free will. So whether or not we have free will, and for me, most importantly, also the implications, what it means to have free will or not to have free will. And I think that's the more exciting part. So in this series we spoke, I think, quite a lot about free will. It always comes up again and again, I think, and I think it's one of the most interesting topics anyway, because it has huge implications, I think, whether we think we have free will or whether we don't think we have free will. And I think, it can be a theoretical discussion whether we have free will or not, but we will approach it a bit differently today. So let's see. So when the question comes whether or not we have free will, for me it's always the question, to whom is there free will? Because usually we take it for granted that we have free will. That's sort of how we grew up. Like we grew up, at the age of 1.5 years old. Until then, we don't realize a lot because we're just sort of floating in the space, in a way. And then slowly there's this identification happening with thoughts, with the body, and we sort of realize that everyone around us is sort of building this, this self, and this self, it becomes, so at least that's how I feel, or how I felt, becomes more an obsession, like the more we grow up, it's like at the beginning it's never so much about, we play with our friends and we just play with them and we don't care what happens the next day or what happens the next hour, and kids are not talking to their friend or to their mom and say, oh, I don't like, tomorrow and next Tuesday I don't want to play with Carl because I don't think I will enjoy it. Children, they just go and play, right? They just take whatever is there and they just sort of, they don't even make the best out of it. They're just there. They may also get angry. They may also have emotions, obviously, but it's nothing that they take even from one moment to the other. They don't even take it from one day to the other. But the more we grow up, nowadays, when we become adults, we take things not just from moment to moment, not just from one day to the next day, but even to, next week, to next month, and even more. So our days are actually not so much more dictated by what's happening right in front of us right now, but so much of what happened in the past and what happened in the future. And that's sort of dictating our lives, which is quite a heavy weight, or it seems as if it's a heavy weight for us. And sometimes this can be a great thing because I think I said it last time as well, that because whenever something happens that we don't like, it's like sort of a slap in the face, and it's sort of a sign for us to maybe look at something more deeply, something that we have maybe taken for granted, or we resist, we don't want to see something, and life comes and slaps us more and more. At least that's how I felt in my life when I was like in hospital twice, once for like 2 weeks and once for like 7 weeks. So anyway, so that's sort of how we grew up, and then, as I said, there's this identification with this body and the thoughts, and we think that the thoughts are about us and from us, and that's why we put all our attention on the thoughts. It's like, when we don't see it, it's like we think, that's a normal thing to do, and then we have this heaviness with us, we cannot sleep at night, we worry about what other people think of us. It's like it's a very strong obsession about ourselves. We said it last time. We walk through the city and we look at the shopping windows, not because we want to see what's in there, but we want to see whether we look sharp today, or whether our new outfit looks great on us. So it's like this constant thing. It's what I'm describing. It's not something that's good or bad, but it's just something, sort of a pattern that we can observe when we look. And so that happens. So the identification happens with our bodies and with our mind, and that identification, that self-obsession, I call it now, is basically, or the consequence of that, or the pattern of that, is to have free will. So that, what we identify with this thought, the body, that assumes, because the pattern of this is claiming. It claims everything it comes in touch with. There's the 5 senses that we have. the touching, the smelling, and so on. And everything we come into basically in contact with our five senses, we claim. We say, and even goes beyond. We say we are the thinker of our thoughts. We say that, I don't know, I did this and that, and I feel guilty that I did this. So we take everything that happens. We are the doer of things that are happening, and we're basically claiming everything. That's sort of one of the core principles of this long-lasting identity that we take ourselves, that we think is born and then dies at some point as this body, and that's sort of the pattern. So by claiming everything and having free will as part of this pattern, yeah. So you could argue and say, is there something like as free will? And you could argue there's the experience of free will. It feels like as if I have free will, but if you ask me, as I said, the question is who is there who has free will? And if you ask me, if you really look deeply, then you see that there's no such thing as free will, because there's no one there who has free will. There's this saying from Ramana Maharshi, this Indian, whatever he was, wise man. He said, there's a presupposing of a non-existing thing, looking salvation for the non-existing thing. And by doing so, by trying to get a salvation for a non-existing thing, we are actually creating that, and that's what's actually happening. This thing that we usually identify ourselves with is not a reality. It seems as if it exists, and it seems and it even feels as if, but that's just something that's going on, and I think that's a very important point. So I give you another example, and I really like that example, and most of you I think already know it. It's the story, and I want to repeat it because I think repetition in this also helps a lot has helped me a lot also to realize a few things. So there's this example of this mushrooms, I think they call it the family of the cordyceps, and that's happening in nature all the time. So there's the family of the cordyceps, the mushrooms, and the only way for them to reproduce is that they have those spores and they spit them out, yeah. And because usually the other mushrooms from that family is far away, or sometimes even a forest where the wind doesn't go so well. So they spit out the spores, and then what happens is the only way to reproduce is that they hack into a ant. So they burrow into an ant, they hack into the ant's brain, and then what they do is they tell the ant basically where to go, where to find the next mushroom. And then once they find the next mushroom, it basically kills the ant, that spore, and out of the brain it grows another mushroom. So that's what's happening in nature. It's not like some horror movie or something, but that's actually what's happening. And why I'm saying this is because for me there's a huge implication in that. It means because this story, which seems to be crazy, is actually something that's happening to us every day, all the time almost. Why? Because, for instance, when you take thoughts, our thoughts, where we, as I said, when we grow up, we usually identify fully with thoughts. We don't even, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, just observe your thoughts, or you're not your thoughts, you would go like, what thoughts? It's like the fish in the water, if you ask the fish in the water, hey, what is water? He would be like, do you like the water? He would be like, what is water? You don't realize that because you're always drenched in it. You never knew it without the water. So yeah, in this story, what's happening is, there's usually thoughts coming and going, and in this example, in this analogy, we are like this ant, right? We're this ant, and then there's a spore coming, and so the thoughts are coming, and since we think those thoughts are about us or from us, we think we are those thoughts, and that's why they have the power to basically hypnotize us in a way. They have the power, it can be Saturday morning, and just like, let's say we have a nice coffee or tea, and everything is great, and all of a sudden nothing happened, but all of a sudden a thought comes and tells us, you're gonna die in 3 weeks, or you're gonna your husband is going to leave you, or whatever it is, and this can mess up completely our day. So we have given so much power to thoughts that, and it's actually something that's not happening, but this can mess up our day. That shows us, what kind of life is that like, where we could be so influenced by something that's actually not even happening. And that's the only reason is exactly because of that, is because we take the thoughts as something from us and about us. That's the only reason why we're so obsessed with them, and also with our body. And that's the thing, because we don't notice. It's almost like, let's say somebody's breaking into your house, and you let them just take everything, because the one who's breaking in, we take as ourselves. So they have access to everything because we think it's part of us, and that's sort of part of the thing. It's like that. And that, once this sort of, let's say, this spore is in us, in our brains, only then we're sort of enslaved to that. And that has a huge implication, because then what happens is so of course when we have great thoughts, and when we are by the ocean, then of course we have a great time. But then, when there's maybe not so nice thoughts coming, then we don't have. It's like a stock market, So, and as I said, the question I always had for myself is it wise, or is it, when I felt I have the option, and is it wise, once I felt I have the option, to make my happiness or my peace dependent on something that's like, whose nature is to go up and down. Because for some reason, those thoughts, that there's like 70,000 thoughts every day that we think, and out of those 70,000, I think 90% of them are reproduced from yesterday. So it's like, if you think about that, it's like an insane system. And if we make our life dependent on that insane system, I mean, what can we expect? We can only expect craziness or some hard times, because that's sort of, that's just the logical consequence. So when it comes to free will, that's exactly the point. Meaning that, as I said, that system, as we think, the claiming, it claims it has free will. So everything that happens, we say, oh yeah, I did that because of that. We find explanations, we make up stories, whether it's in the profession or with the family, but things are happening, and it's almost like we're playing God for everything. We take ourselves to be like, oh yeah, I did that because this. Like, if some people ask me why I moved to Hamburg, I would come up with 5 reasons, but honestly, I have no clue why I came here. But I'm very good at explaining to people, because I have 4 friends in Hamburg, and the apartment is very nice, the weather sucks, I could also say, why did you move to Hamburg? Because the weather sucks, and people would be like, that's not logical. Yeah, exactly. But if you really look at, or let's say, if you really look at our reasoning that we give to certain circumstances, it's like, because it's so beautiful, to see that, like, when a thought comes, even when we say something stupid to someone, and we feel guilty. Let's say there's some important person in our life, and we say something stupid, and then we feel so guilty, like, sometimes not just for the moment, but for the next day, for weeks, for months sometimes, and we regret it. But when we understand, for instance, that there's something bigger going on, then we, like, of course, we don't, like, it's not to be mixed up with responsibility. There's some responsibility, that's something else, but thoughts are just coming and going, that's it. I heard this example also, which I like, is, for instance, like, if you take this as an instrument, sort of the body and the thoughts as an instrument, like, sort of like the brush, of a painter, right? Sort of, this is the brush. The brush doesn't have a clue what's going on, what's in the head of the painter, or what he wants to do. But we are just sort of like, the brush, like, this body, mind, is just like an instrument. It's like there to basically, be in touch with the world and everything. But what happens is, imagine the brush is starting to claim it has a free will. Like, imagine there's the painter, it's painting, and like, oh yeah, now I'm going this way. Oh, now I want to be soaked into green color. It's like, and it would come up with all the stories, but it actually has no clue about what's happening. The painter in this example, he has this vision and he would do this and that. And that's sort of, I think, what's happening actually to us, We're like the brush, we're like pushed here, we moved to Hamburg, you come from Bulgaria, and then, you're sent here and you get sick and you get healthy and you have children and you have a house, and we always take it very seriously. And why did you do this? Why did you want children? It doesn't make sense. Da, da, da. And it's like the brush, if you ask the brush, why did you move there? Why did you build a house? Oh yeah, I wanted a house because I think it's great here. So it feels like that in a way, and when the thing is, when we do not see this process, then we're in it, and when we're in something, we do not see it, and basically when we're in something, we do not see the outside and we cannot be out of it. So basically that means we're lost in something. Only once we see a mechanism like this, we have the ability to have options. I think that's the beauty of awareness in general, being aware of something. So I think that gives us a time or some space to have options, because when we're not aware of it, then it doesn't make any sense what I'm saying. But if we're aware of it, then it makes a lot of sense, because then we understand there's an option, and then only then I think we have the option to be free from all of this chaos or the system. It's like for me I always 20 examples every day in my life of this awareness thing. Today I think I was standing at a traffic light for pedestrians, and then the traffic light was red. And then some guy just walked. I was like, oh, usually I'm the one doing that. But then he was like, I was doing something else, I think, and then he just walked. I was like, why is he walking? And then I realized there was a huge construction, the whole street was closed. And there were like 4 people waiting on the red traffic light because there was no reason to do so. But so if you see the big picture, you understand it's stupid to wait there because there's no car coming anyway. But if you are, if you don't look on the right side and you're not aware of the construction which is right in front of you, then it doesn't make sense. Then you would even scream at that person, say, "Hey, how can you walk, the red light?" But that's the only thing that makes sense in that case, and that's why I think awareness is so important, or not to be in something, but to see it from the outside. And only then, when we have the overview, when we're not stuck in something, only then we have the choice to do something. And that's exactly the case with free will. So when we understand this mechanism, this claiming may still be going on and say, oh yeah, why did you buy these shoes? Oh, I always like this brand, blah, blah, blah. But when we see the mechanism that this is happening, then we can be outside, and then something like such as free will doesn't make any sense. It's like, life becomes like entertainment then, it's just beautiful to not just observe others, but also this mechanism here, because I think it's also important, because what we usually do, I think, with this as well is we perceive the world, or we think we are here, and life starts as of here. That's sort of the body, and everything else is outside. But when we realize that even this is sort of on the canvas, and it's like what we are is more like there, then we realize this is not better than this, because usually that's also part of this pattern that we do is we usually identify with this, and we think this is great and everything else sucks. Sometimes, it depends. Sometimes if we're depressed or whatever is going on, we don't have a lot of self-confidence, or our self-image is very bad, then it may be that actually it's the other way around. We think we're the worst, and everybody else is shining and they're doing everything great, I think that's another pattern that we have. So it's either I love this cartoon, which I really like. It's like there's there's 20 people on the street, and everybody has like the thoughts, wow, everyone else seems to have life in full control, they all look so great. Everyone is thinking the same thing about the others. That's sort of in a way how it is, no? it's yeah, it can be the positive or the negative, but most of the time, that's the thing. It's more negative. You know, that's sort of the construct of this, because that what we're talking about here, what we identify with, usually, it doesn't have a truth on its own. It doesn't have an existence on its own. Like as I said earlier, Ramana Maharshi said, the presupposing of a non-existing thing, and this non-existing thing that what we take ourselves to be it doesn't exist. So we have to give it a life choose all the time, basically. And that's also a funny thing is, like, we usually look for peace or for a joy or something that we sort of call home, and the thing is that we look for that on the plane of the nature of this body mind. Like, for instance, we look for a peace of mind, but if you ask me, there's no such a thing as a peace of mind, because the peace that we're looking for is actually, it's not part of this construct, but it's sort of, I don't know, behind it, or it's sort of soaked through everything. That's like what we are, is that peace, is that joy. That's it. And what we're trying to do is, and I always say that's one of the biggest confusions, is we try to achieve or reach that joy and that peace through the form. I usually call it the form and the formless. So the form is this, what we identify with. We try to become the formless through the form. That's why, many people do, I don't know, yoga or meditation and find it very attractive. And I think as such, those activities are great and they can bring a lot of peace and happiness. But what happens then, as soon as we again try to claim that there is a meditator, that there is someone doing yoga, then it becomes again a fight, And you can, I think, achieve some kind of degree of, I don't know, calmness or happiness through those activities, but it will never. But the thing is, the problem is that this thing, the claiming happens again, and then it destroys even that. And then, you want to do, I don't know, people tell you to do yoga once a week, and then you do yoga once a week and you feel great, but then something still happens. You still get angry at the people in the traffic. Then you think, okay, I should do it probably 3 times a week, and then you become even better, and then you still get angry at your husband, and then you tell yourself, yeah, you probably have to become a yoga instructor, and then once you become a yoga instructor, then it's still getting better, but still everyone pisses you off, and then it goes on, and then you tell yourself, yeah, I should probably do one more day, and more, and probably a different kind of yoga, it's like a always ongoing thing, and yeah, so basically, that sort of just, quickly describe the pattern of what's going on, and why actually, it doesn't make sense actually to discuss whether there is free will or not. Because when you see it clearly, it becomes very obvious. So now I want to speak about the implication it has in our lives, because they are huge. When we assume that we have free will, it, like, for me at least, then it means life is like a roller coaster, like pure, like, forget like what's happening here in the world and with the wars and everything. That's one thing that's happening, but the roller coaster, I mean actually how we feel about it, because I think one thing is what's happening here, which I think we don't have influence on at all, but I think there's some kind of influence we have is how we cope with things, right? And when we assume we have free will, then first of all, also we identify with this body, and the body is born at some point and it dies. So you would be under constant pressure and making up things like time is money, and you would think, oh, I have to do this and this and this in my lifetime. And there's always a constant fear of getting sick, there's a constant fear of maybe dying. Like, it's a roller coaster, but in a very negative sense, I would say. And I paint the picture a bit negative, but just to see the contrast, because there is something else that I think that we all are already, that we don't have to achieve. But then on the other hand, so you would need to, because when I was a child, I felt always very safe, and I didn't have to think about the future and everything, right? And I also had parents around me, and they sort of took care of everything. you could claim that, yeah, of course, because you know you had parents, but then once you turn, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, it's still okay, but you start, like, people tell you stuff like, oh, you have to find a good job, you have to have a good education, and then once you get out of school, you're like, oh, the real life is starting now. But you know, you have this gradual thing of, I don't know, that's how I felt at least, like life is becoming heavier and heavier, and you're like responsible, and if you don't take responsibility, then something bad can really happen to you, and everybody warns you, and then you really take this seriously, and then you get depressed, or you know, you go and you'll get lost in a career, or you throw yourself into something, you know, and because you feel like there's, like as I said, if you have this free will, you feel like if you don't do something now, something bad will happen, you know, because you are the driver in the car, and if you stop driving, then the car will just collapse. But you know, for me, and that, you know, that's I think a horrible scenario, but for me it's more like, you know, I mentioned this example a few times, like in The Simpsons, you know, in the intro, I don't know if you know it, but basically there's you see like a little baby driving a car like this, and it's zoomed into the baby, and it's like, I don't know, 1 or 2 years old, I think, it can not even walk. It's driving the car, and then it zooms slowly out, and then you see the mom actually driving, and the baby is just on a mocking wheel, you know. So it's like doing this, and mom is doing this, and then it's also doing this, you know. So I feel like you know, by pretending that we are sort of in the driver's seat, that brings all the heaviness, because look, we could go left, we could go right, we never know what would be the right thing to do, and that's a huge burden. At least that's what I perceive, it's a huge burden, because at any time you could mess up your whole life, you know, because if you take that decision, you should you be with this boyfriend or with this girlfriend, should you take this job or not, like your whole life becomes like a huge, I don't know, yeah, so many decisions to be taken, and you never know whether you're right or wrong. You could take the worst decisions at any time. And so that's sort of, you know, the life that happens, where, you know, you need to plan everything, and you need to la la la. So life is very, you know, you can live it, but it doesn't feel lighthearted. It isn't, you're far away, I think, from the joy, or from the love, or from the compassion that, you know, that I think we are. And then on the other hand, you know, like I get also asked by people sometimes, like they say, okay, so let's assume I really don't have free will, but then what would happen? I would just sit on my couch all the time, and nothing would happen. But then my answer is, it's obvious, is no, because it's not like that. It's not like that you, because it's again playing God. It's not like that you take the decision now, oh yeah, so far I had free will, and as of now I don't have free will. Because if you ask me, even if this claiming is happening of having free will, you never had free will in the first place. So what happens is, after this now, after your decision to say there is no such thing as free will, life will go exactly on as it used to be, exactly the same. Because there was never any free will. You claim to have free will, that was going on. That was sort of, you know, there's life happening, and then there's sort of another layer of a story that you tell yourself, oh, I did this, or I did it. But so what happens is, once you say, let's say, okay, I'll try it out, it won't happen that you will just sit on your couch still, because nothing changed at all. The only thing that may change is the story that you tell yourself, or that you tell others. That's the only thing that changes. So if you don't believe me, and that's, I think it's important that you don't believe me anything I say, because I'm a big fan of challenging the status quo and always questioning things. So if you disagree, it's good. If you agree, it's good. But neither disagree nor agree, but see it for yourself. So if you tried it for yourself, you will see that not much will happen. Maybe just the story that you tell yourself will happen, will change. So yeah, and if you look at, so imagine, like entertain the idea of not having any free will. Yeah, and like I want to also tell you one other thing is, like there's, like for instance in psychology there have been many experiments on for instance thoughts. Yeah, so we usually, because one of the big things is that we usually think that we have free will because we're the thinker of our thoughts, but there's many experiments where they say now, I think between 2 and 7 seconds after some stimuli was given, the thoughts come. So they prove it that the thoughts actually come later. But you don't need those experiments. You can also see for yourself. If you just sit there still, or you don't even have to sit still, but if you just observe what the thoughts do, you will at some point, when you're calm enough, when you're like a lake that's very calm, when you throw a stone in, then you see the waves. If there's stormy weather like in Hamburg all the time, then you throw a stone in, you don't notice anything. It's like this. And once you have sort of a calm mind and you observe the thoughts, you will realize that they just come and go, just like that, without you interfering. They will still come and go. And I think that's something beautiful to see, because then you realize there is no such thing as free will. You can hear it, you can read about it, you can discuss it, whether you have free will or not, but at the end of the day, the big shift will come when you really notice it for yourself with your thoughts and everything. So anyway, when you do not have, when you realize that there's no such thing as free will, like it will change your life completely, like completely. Why? Because so imagine, when there's no such thing as free will, everything is just happening anyway. Whether you want it to happen or not, whether you think you have control over things or not, it will just happen. Even, and nothing is excluded from that. So even, like my talking right now is there. Even when you say, oh, but if there's no free will, then why are you sitting here and why are we talking about this? That is happening, all of this, it's like, there's this... So all of this is happening in front of the camera, right? Like we always try to get behind the camera as the stuff that's in front of the camera, but that never works. And I saw once this, I don't know what it's called, it's this British satire show, Monty Python, yeah. And it was a really cool show where they were basically lost in a jungle. I think I told it a few times. Those guys were lost in a jungle, and they were like, wow, we used all of our food, all of our drinks, like we're gonna die now, it's crazy. Like, there were like 4 or 5 people. It was a film crew, right? They were doing some films there, and they're like, oh, we're gonna die, that's it. For 2 days we didn't drink, we didn't eat, we're gonna die. And then this one guy was like, hold on, but if we look, there's, hold on, so we're gonna die. And then this guy's like, hold on, but we are on TV right now. That means there must be a film crew somewhere here. And then they're like, hey, look, there's the camera guy. He was like hiding in the forest. He's like, hey, wow, we're safe. Look, there's a film crew. And then it goes on, and then again after like 2 days, they are out of all their food and drinks, and then again they're gonna die, and then there's another film crew guy showing up, and another film crew, and that's sort of, I think, one of the big also mysteries of philosophy is exactly that point. Our mind sort of creates those layers and layers and layers of things, but the point is that we try to, as I said, that which is in front of the camera tries to get behind the camera, but that's an impossibility. There's some smart people, like, I don't know, from hundreds of years ago, they were also saying exactly that. They say, like, what can be perceived, or what is perceiving cannot be perceived. And there's a lot of truth in that, meaning, we are the perceiving of things. And so if something is perceiving, it cannot be perceived. It's like, imagine your tongue was made of salt, and I gave you salt on your tongue. Like, would you taste it? Because the same of the same would not feel, like, you need contrast in order to perceive something. It's the same with that. So like, if you really take that statement seriously, what is perceiving cannot be perceived. It has to be different from that what's perceiving. Then all of this here, because I can perceive this table. Usually we look outside, right? I can perceive this table, I can perceive these people, I can perceive this camera, I can perceive, and I can also perceive here, this body, I can perceive this, I can, then we usually stop here, but it goes on. So there's something else that's perceiving all of that. And that's exactly the point, that formless thing that we cannot grasp, but what we are. And that's, I think, another important point here. Here we're not talking about something that's reserved to an elite, and once, we have been chosen by someone, by this elite, to also be enlightened or something, then everything is fine. But my point here is that doesn't make any sense, because what we are and is exactly that formless, and not just, there's like 3 sages that are the formless and everything else is the form. Obviously not. It's like all of us, if you can even say all of us, is that formless. That's our nature, that's it. But what happens is that we identify so much with all the stuff that's happening here, with the form, and at some point we realize, hey, it doesn't make sense to be in this form, because it's fun and stuff, but there's no, deeper sense in that. And then what happens is, because we have taken that which comes after this body and this mind, we want to become the formless as the form. I want to become enlightened, because life as in the form is not, worth living, or it has so many obstacles or so many problems. So I want to have the attributes of love and joy and all the stuff and peace, and then I'm trying to be, because I have identified as something that I'm not, and I try to become it. And that's exactly what Ramana Maharshi said in a statement, presupposing. So I presuppose, meaning something is not so, but I suppose it to be so, but pre. So what happens is, I take this body as given, and everything else is happening to this body. But what he is saying is, it's a presupposing of a non-existing thing. So there must be something before what I take myself to be, and that's exactly the formless. And this is also not so much about because you hear that in many spiritual circles. I think you hear that a lot. It's like, you're this form. Like, basically in spirituality, it's always about the form, like the different people trying to become, or they're told about the formless, the love and the joy and everything. And then they think automatically, oh, I'm here, I'm the form, and I can become the formless. And they need a guru and a teacher, and because they are there and they can lead them the way. But when you do this, you put yourself in a hamster wheel in a way, or in a vicious cycle. So my point is to because that's what's happened. Like, if somebody says, oh, you have to be much more in the moment, you will enjoy it when you're much more in the moment and everything is easier. But he would say, oh yeah, tell me about the books, but he would only say that if he buys into my statement saying, oh yeah, I'm not in the moment. And that's what happens, We usually buy everything, say, oh yeah, you tell me how I can get more in the moment, I read this book, How to Get More in the Moment, and we read book number 1, oh yeah, it's already getting better, but I'm still not there. Then we read book number 2, oh yeah, I'm getting even closer, but I'm still not there. And we make up all those things. But the point is that it's not possible to ever be out of the moment, but that's for us, because this is happening so fast to us, we don't understand that, we don't see that, and then we're vulnerable to buying all kind of stuff, we reread all the books, we fall for advertising and all this stuff, but when we catch that in the moment, hey, it's not possible to ever get out of the moment, then it doesn't interest me if I read this book or not, because I am aware. There's this beautiful story. I make it short because I told it a few times, but it's exactly that story. And if you think about it afterwards, you think it's ridiculous, but it's exactly that, and it's so easy to oversee. It's like, this guy, some guy approaches this other guy, and he says, hey, your wife is cheating on you. And he's like, what? That cannot be possible. That's crazy. What should I do? What do I do in this position? And he says, yeah, I don't know what you can do, but I heard that they're meeting tonight at midnight at the church. And he's like so confused, because all his friends are telling him, hey, you should do this or you should do this, and then he's totally confused. He doesn't know whether he should go there tonight or not, or if he should take a gun with him or not, or he doesn't know how he's gonna react when he sees them. So he's completely confused, and he's just a mess. And then he finally decides he will go. He goes already 11, and then he gets super nervous. The closer it gets to midnight, he gets super nervous. He waits on a tree, and then it's 11:45, no one is there. It's midnight, no one is there. It's 12:30, no one is there. It's 1 o'clock, no one is there. But he's sweating, and then at some point Like he just gives up. He's like, I don't know what's happening, and he just gives up fully. And then, like some flash comes to him and says, "Hey, hold on, I'm not even married." You know, like if you hear that story, you think, "Is this guy stupid?" It's such a stupid story because it's so obvious. He would notice that he's not married. But that's, if you really look at this, this is actually what's happening. What I think or what I see is happening to us all the time. It's exactly that. We take ourselves. And that's even a bigger thing than this guy with a wife. We take ourselves to be something that we're not. That's like, it's like so by default suffering. And we oversee what we are at any given time. And it's not like, that's the thing. This is not some, like, I'm not talking about heaven or something. This is something like very, like, it's not tangible, but it's always given. It's something that's always given. At any time without any requirements necessary. And that's the craziness, I think. So that story is actually nothing compared to that, So yeah, that's basically about free will. And yeah, as I said, don't believe me anything I said, but just look for yourself. And I think that's enough if you... And this is just like, for me, this is like an invitation to entertain the possibility that it can be like this, because as I said, I think the worst thing is if you hear something in this and you don't feel that this is the case. I mean, one option is you can say, oh, I agree, I disagree, this is not like this, I have free will, that's also fine, Then you come from this claiming, which is fine as well. Or you can say, okay, I just I don't know, I think it's bullshit what I'm saying, and that's also fine. Or you can also have this sort of openness and say, hey, maybe I'll see and take it for myself, and that's it. So it's just a humble message that has changed my life, in many ways, and just here to share it. So yeah, we can discuss if you have any questions or if you have any comments or if you want to agree or disagree.
Well, for me the big question would be, but if you're not running it, who is? So, I'm not sure I'm going to get an answer.
Yeah, it's like it's like those those old tribes. They for them it's not enough that there's rain. For them it's not enough that there's sun or anything, or like the Incas in Peru. It's not enough for them that there's some, I don't know, earthquakes coming or bad weather coming or something, that kills something. They always need to have a person responsible for it. Or like the Greeks, they always had a god for the weather, for this and that. So yeah, it's hard sometimes for us, to understand that who's running the show then, because we sort of always need like an entity, or like you have many conspiracy theories, where, or like even in our heads it's going on sometimes, where we say, well, I don't know, let's say somebody did something and we interpret it as something, oh yeah, they wanted to hurt me, I knew it, they wanted, they only do it to piss me off or something like this. But usually I think, I don't know, 99.9% of the people, they don't try to piss us off, they don't even care about us, but we enjoy it a lot to think or project it onto them that they want to piss us off. It's sort of like that. It's always, we try to have somebody there.
So how would you go about the shift from the Greeks, they projected onto some godness, happened in recent times to ourselves? So that I'm projecting it to others, however, indirectly to myself. So that about the concept of free will. I'm responsible for what I have done here, instead of some goodness. The tribes could argue, I'm not responsible for that. That's a god responsible for rain, right? But you could say, I'm responsible for the weather. I'm not prepared. I don't have my brother with me or whatever.
What's your question?
Whether you would agree on that this shifted
In society?
yeah, from the object being a goodness, a God, to the claiming you mentioned, to ourselves.
I mean, yeah, look, like this claiming, you can even see, sometimes you hear the sentence, even like, if you don't eat up your plate, it will rain tomorrow, right? I don't know, probably a problem in Hamburg is that many people waste their food, I don't know. But or like if you go to India, in India you have also, I don't know, millions of gods. So, and if you look here in the society as such, we don't say, because it's raining, we may say this to the plate, but that's more like, I don't know, we laugh about it a bit. But, we don't say, oh yeah, I don't know, Saint Peter or whoever is responsible for the weather, Like as a kid, you sort of think, oh yeah, Saint Peter, he's letting it rain now. But when you grow up, you sort of let go of that. I don't know. Like it depends on the society. But if you look at very traditional societies, you still have that. It's stronger than here, let's say in the West, where it's more about consumerism.
Yeah, maybe I should make it more precise. If it affects you in your life, in your day, so I miss that train, or if something happens to me, affects me, and I identify with it, I could project it to the God responsible for trains, but I don't do this. I kind of attribute it to myself.
Yeah, but I think, as I said, I think responsibility is. I would not say responsibility and free will is the same. I think that's a different thing, because responsibility for me is, let's say, there's by understanding there's no such thing as free will. You create the opportunity for options, in a way, right? Because I said, if you're more aware of things, you have options, and then, there's a sense of responsibility, because you are able to have the space, and out of the space, you can be actually much more responsible than if you don't have that. If you're like driven by outside circumstances, and you don't have the space or the options, then you just do things, and you cannot be as responsible then. I think you can be more responsible when you have the space to have several options. But I would not say those are the same topics, because many people say, right, oh, but then it's even like in front of the law, right? Because in the law it says, you do something and you're responsible, right? So you cannot say, oh, that's also, it's a big fallacy, I think, in spirituality. Some people hear that and say, oh, you're not the body, you're not this mind, and you don't have free will, and then they say, hey, I don't know, like, hey, do the dishes, and they say, oh, I'm not here, I'm not doing anything, but that's a lame excuse, like, that doesn't have anything to do with this discussion. I don't have free will, I cannot clean it, but that's a game,
But I didn't really.
But you are taking this, you decide something. Is that free will or not?
I think you don't decide anything. Like, look, if you look at, I think there's no one who's deciding, but there's a decision taking place, obviously. So, for instance, if you look at the decision-making process, yeah, so there's many factors involved, yeah. So, for instance, let's say you have a big decision: should you do A or B? Yeah. So
you look in meetup and you think, okay, I will go to this.
For instance, right?
And
but
I have to go at 7 or 6 o'clock and
exactly
make some design.
Yeah, so it seems, as I said earlier, it seems like you say, oh yeah, I can decide, I don't go. But then if you look at the decision process, then, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, so there's different things happening. Let's say, yeah, you see the topic and say, oh yeah, I like it, something is interesting, I always wanted to hear about free will, so you click and say, oh, I go. And then you have some doubts and think, oh, I don't know, I've never been there, maybe these guys are weird, or I don't know. And then, let's say somebody, I don't know, a friend call, or you see a friend and you and then you're like, I'm probably not gonna go, and then some friend calls and says, hey, I don't know, have you heard of this free will thing? There's a thing tonight, don't you want to come? So what I'm saying is there's many factors usually involved, but we usually think we have full control, but we don't control those factors. Or let's say you have another decision where, I don't know, should you ask your boss for more money or something, and then you speak to some of your friends, and this friend says, yeah, you should do it, this friend says, maybe not, and sometimes we don't have the choice whether we choose this friend or not, or somebody calls us and then, I wanted to ask you a question. So there's many things that are going on that we, as I said, and the biggest thing is to understand, to look and have to create that space to understand, hey, is that something that I'm claiming, or is it something that's actually happening? And if it's something that is actually happening, it would need to have something like, Kant was saying it a priori, it has to be before something. And that means there needs to be this, what Ramana Maharshi said, this non-existing thing, it needs to be an existing thing, and everything else comes from there. So yeah, but if you ask me, the short answer is there's a decision-making process taking place, but I don't think there's, us as an entity say, it's A or B. I don't think that's happening. But the claiming is happening of that.
Are you defining free will as the thoughts that are from this body? Or you can say, okay, free will, you are here, you came on the earth with a to-do list, and you are like, there is a higher force.
That's possible, yeah. Like as I said, the example of the painter and the brush, I think, the thing is the free will topic usually comes up as the brush, how much free will do we have? And there I think we don't. But I think, as you said, maybe before birth or something, or a higher force or a higher power or whatever, decides, hey, go on the earth and learn those lessons. This could be the possible, but I don't know.
Please make these experiences because they are missing in our database.
For instance.
The big one, you know?
Yeah, but if we assume, the thing is, it can be like this, but it can also be not like this, yeah. But, I think I think that's also the thing, when we're on earth in this case, it seems like as with a brush, but as you said, if there's something outside and you are aware of that, then it can be like this, yeah. I think there's nothing that's not possible in this world, You want to say?
I can go back to Peter and the weather and why Peter make it rain. As a kid, you know that, like Peter make it rain. And you grown up, you know the weather is shitty. But it's not even the weather, because you say the weather, which is the entity right now. It's the God. It's the weather. It's shitty. But it's not even the weather. Like most of the places probably it's sunny, warm, and it's nice. Just in Hamburg it's shitty. So it's not even the weather. It's just the local weather.
And if you think about it, there's blue sky even above the clouds. Right?
Exactly. But the problem is for me is the point of view. As a kid, you know Peter. When you grown up, you know the weather. And some people grown up more, get some education, the weather, it's not exactly what it is. Like it's influence from everything on the planet. And if you grown up more, I guess, and you have a bigger point of view, you see that the planet weather actually is influenced from the moon, and then you go to the sun, and the sunstorms, then you go to the solar system, and then you go to the Milky Way, and then you go to the universe. So like planet which is so far that you can not even imagine influence the weather on this planet. And this is the biggest picture which I can imagine. And when I realize that, I know what the free will, it's not free will, because we're influenced from everything. It's you kind of have a choice, but not exactly. It's like the dolls which you wind with the spring inside, and they just jump around randomly. They're influenced. Like if you're the doll, you think you jump in this direction because you want to, but you're influenced from the wind, from the gravity, from the sunlight, from the people, from the objects on the ground. You don't know that.
Exactly.
So free will, it's not free will. Like you're just a doll. People wind you and you run. You just jump around randomly. And people push you in this direction, this direction. You go to this school, not to this school because something happened. You come to Hamburg because something happened.
I mean, even gravity is a huge force on us.
Yeah, exactly.
We just ignore
So,
that stuff. Yeah.
Like if you see the big picture, you kind of, again, this is why I say kind of, because you kind of have the choice to do the things or not to do the things. Like you don't have the choice to choose what you want to do. You like sport, you don't like sport. You like beer, you don't like beer. It's not your choice. It's what you are. So you can accept what you are and try to do something with what you are, or try to fight the system. So yeah, you have the choice to do or not to do.
That's true, and there's also like what confirms what you say is, you know, the whole science about astrology, you know, like Vedic astrology or any other astrology. There's a lot in there. Or also, like the other example I usually mention is, if you just look at the body, like like we usually think we have so much, or it's our body, right? And then what it would imply is that imagine you were in full control of your body. Like I think anybody of us here would die after 1 minute probably, or 2 minutes. Why? Because we would be able to, like, we were in control of our heartbeat, so we would have to think about our heartbeat always in the right rhythm, exactly the right amount of blood, whatever. Then we would need to digest, the pizza I had yesterday. I'm like, hey, do you have time tomorrow? No, sorry, I have to digest. I have to split the cells. It's insane when you just think about it. But what, this claiming that we have is in full control. It would just ignore it. We're like, yeah, of course, I can. I went to this 2-week retreat in Thailand and we learned how to control my heartbeat, Like, we make up stuff like that. And, so, yeah, there are so many factors that we don't have control of, but this claiming is so strong and it's so convinced of itself that it even believes it has free will or whatever.
Yeah, most of us is automatic, and we think we're not we're not in control that much.
Yeah.
What do you think about the law of attraction?
The what?
Law of attraction.
Is that a real thing?
Pardon?
I don't know what's that. Explain.
Law of attraction?
Yes.
That you are attracting what you are thinking.
Oh, no. I mean, it doesn't work in my case, so.
There was a movie, The Secret, it's
Yes.
called, it's not explained.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Just watch it, it's not, I'm not saying it's true.
No, yeah, okay.
The Secret, you can watch on YouTube.
Check it, get it.
So I think, like, I have two answers to that. One answer is it's exactly part of that cycle, meaning, like, for instance, like, I have also I looked into this topic a while ago, deeper, and whenever I'm more into this, there's more fear, there's more insecurity and everything, yeah?
Really?
And because what happens is, like, what I see is that it's part of this mind trick, meaning I think I'm here, and I think I can be here, and once I do enough, like, when I have enough positive thoughts, when I have enough this, then at some point I become this. But also at the same time, when I think negative thoughts and when I'm negative, oh my God, then I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do this. Like, it becomes like like almost like a fight of life and death in a way. But for me, that's a mind trick because, as I said earlier, you can only go into this when you buy into the idea of saying, oh yeah, true, I'm a mess. I need to get out of here. I want to become a millionaire. I want to live by the ocean. I want to have an amazing car. I want to have an amazing family. So if I just think positive and if I attract this amazing energy, then I can do it. But you know, by doing that, you put yourself in this analogy with the moment. Somebody says, hey, you know what? I can show you how to be in a moment. And then you buy into it, you're like, yeah, and then you do crazy stuff more and more. So that's one thing. On the other hand, you know, I'm not saying that all of this is false, because there's for instance, it's obvious. Like if you, for instance, I don't know, you go tomorrow to the shopping mall, and then, like, you know, I think there's something like, let's say, like a group mind in a way. Like you go to the shopping mall, everybody's like busy and nervous and pissed because of the week and stuff, and then you can sense something, you know, it affects your thinking as well. Or if anybody, I think 99% of the people who go to a beautiful beach in, I don't know, California, Pacific Ocean, the sunset, you know, you feel like it influences your thinking, and also, but the thing is, it influences your thinking and the body, right? So there's certain things that make sense like this, but I think the danger is, so I think you can see it as a game a bit, you know, but I think the danger is when you take it seriously, then it can become a thing of life and death, and I think you will end up doing things that don't make so much sense, you know. So it can, as I said, there's true factors in it, but it's many, like, you know, like if you go, for instance, also to, like, I don't know, some esoteric fairs or something, you know, I think there's some great things there, you know, that help people as well. But when you see some cases, you know, they seem to be so lost in, I don't know, things or in trying to become something finally, and they jump from one person to the other, not realizing that, you know, that this is just like more like a game or something.
Yes. I think it's, if you are looking like a game to the thing, it can be good, and not to be attached to things or to become your nature, to be like this, like you said, like the children. I think you can learn from the children best thing you can do, because they are like this. But I know many people, adults, they are unhappy, and they are asking, how do I get happy again? And they need some tools to get there. And then let them go, not be attached, but only to find the path to this state again.
Yeah, that's why, I think that's why also, like, I don't know, self-improvement or spirituality, I think they're very popular, you know, those things, because as you said, you know, people are giving some tools, and yoga and meditation and whatever, mindfulness, you know, people are giving tools, but, you know, I think even if you do all of this, it's still, I think, or from my experience, it puts you in a vicious cycle, you know, in a hamster wheel, because the exercises as such are good, you know, all of this stuff is very good, the tools are very good, I think, but the problem is the claiming. So as soon as we even claim to be a meditator, we can, as I said, we start becoming addicted to that even, we can become addicted to that, or anything, that's the thing of this claiming. So my point is, let's say you have like a rope, and there's many knots, you know, so like let's say as a child you don't have a knot, or maybe just one little one, and then the older you get, the more knots are there. And then I think at some point you're like, oh shit, like midlife crisis, or my life is a mess, or my husband left, the job, blah, blah. And then you realize, oh shit, I have to look at myself. And then there's one way, is basically, let's say the indirect path is you look at this knot of relationship, you go to this person, okay, it's better now. Then you go to that, but it's a never-ending story. And I think sort of what I'm talking about here, at least that's, you know, my experience, or what I see from others, is I think there's one knot, like the first knot, like which is the first one in this row. I think if you pay attention to this one, I think it has the ability to get rid of all the other knots. That's what I think. And that's, for me, it's what I said, you know, to see the mechanism of what's going on, to have the ability to question the status quo. For me, that's like the most valuable thing, because I think also, you know, when you do workshops or you work as a coach, I think you have a toolbox, and then you have a presence or an alertness or awakeness or whatever. And I think you can have the best tools, but without the other thing, or if it's just very low, you don't know how to use the tools very much, like, or you misuse them. But I think if you have the awakeness or the alertness, and to be able to question the status quo, then you can use any tool as well, and there's nothing wrong with the tools. But I think the biggest problem is that people just even then get lost in those tools, or in spirituality, or in all those things. There's nothing, that's also important. I think there's nothing wrong or right with it, but it may just save you a lot of time, to look at it. But then that's the thing, that's not very common in society. That's why today there's not many people sitting, because it's much more attractive to listen to the law of attraction. We're like, oh wow, I want to be a millionaire. Really, I show you how to become a millionaire. Just do this and this, like, oh yeah, write it down and do it. It's much more attractive for our mind than saying stuff like what we say here.
So I really appreciate your image with the knots, with the rope, with the knots. So to me it sounded almost, you didn't say that, but it sounded that I try to get rid of all of the knots by injecting, but not seeing that I'm injecting the very first one, what's the Ramakrishna meant, the presupposing, but I'm not aware of it. So I'm creating part of the problem, trying to solve it. And then the vicious cycle is setting in.
Exactly, because when you solve one, another one comes up. That's exactly. It's nicely put in.
Thank you for the image. That's a key one.
And it's also important, that image, I think, is to understand that, that you could even say that those knots, they're only seeming knots. There's actually no knots there.
It is that I'm identifying.
You're creating them in a way.
That's my perception.
Yeah.
I think there are knots. Maybe you're just.
Because you bought into the first idea that, as like in this example of the moment, that you have bought into it and said, you know what, I'm not in this moment, I need to get into this moment. You bought into the idea so much, like the guy with where the wife is cheating on him. You bought into this idea, and only that brought you into that cycle. When he was alert and awake in the first moment, like, this could be like an authority. Let's say it was really an authority and he really believed it. Like, in that moment, when you're immune, you say, I don't have a wife, right away. You look 1 second, yeah, I don't have a wife, done. And that's exactly like that. Like, we have thoughts of, oh, I'm not good enough. And then you create stories, because once your father or a teacher in elementary school said, hey, you're not good in school, and then you reject it into your whole life, and you believe it like as a reality, not just as something somebody said, but you believe it as reality, and then you buy into it. It's not that it's a fact, but you buy into it, and that creates the problem. So yeah, it's like that. And those are things that are so obvious that we oversee them,
Right.
Go ahead.
Can you give a concrete example with the knots? Because I'm not sure I understand it really. Like, give me a first and 3 others. And
so, one knot could be, I don't know, I have fear of heights, yeah? Let's say, that's one knot. So what you do is, so you go to a psychologist, or you read books, or you go to a workshop, how to get rid of my fear. So then let's say either you have someone where you go 10 years and it's getting better and better a bit, or you find someone like, oh wow, it's really gone, wow, amazing. But then you notice after, because this has dominated your life, let's say, always this fear, you have a good life in general, but it's always this in the background. Then all of a sudden you realize, hey, okay, now another fear popped up, or not a fear, but let's say I have huge problems in relationships. It never ends up happy, and after 2 years it's always over. Then you go to a relationship coach or something, So, but what we don't see in this example is that all of these problems have one thing in common, which is, let's say in this case, the identification as to form. Like, you know, we think, like, you know, we take ourselves to be a separate entity, independent and everything. And that's, like, this claiming, that's the thing. We have, the first knot is that we have started to identify as something that we're not. Like, you know, I give sometimes this example of the clouds in the sky. So you have the blue sky, and it doesn't matter how dark a cloud is, it never left a mark in the sky, it never touched the sky. But what we think is, we think at some point we identify with one of the clouds, you know, we're this cloud, and then the clouds, of course, it has problems, you know, but we can only be in this vulnerable condition because we have identified with something that we're not, this non-existing thing. But removing the first knot would be not to become the cloud as the sky, because that will never be possible, but to realize that we have never been the cloud in the first place. But as soon as you identify yourself with the cloud, then the problems start, you know, that's sort of the rope with the problems, with knots. And I said, as the cloud, there will, by nature, there will always be problems, by nature. Because a cloud can go, it can come again, it can be dark, it can be light, it can be close to the sun and whatever, right? There's all this stuff happening, but the cloud can never become the sky, and in this example, the sky is the solution, you know.
Then the other question would be how do you get there? How do you get out of there?
How does the
cloud?
Blue sky become the sky?
No, how do you get out of the identification?
You know, the good news is
with the cloud.
The good news is that you don't have to become, you cannot become the sky.
You can choose another cloud.
No, you cannot become this. That's the beautiful thing. You cannot become the sky because you have never been the cloud. So you cannot become what you already are. But the thing is, that's exactly, you know, the challenge is that because, you know, what we are is, let's say in this example, is the sky. Then we have started to identify, but question that, what has identified as the cloud? You know, what identifies as the cloud, let's say here, is the body, mind, the thinking. The mind creates a story which it believes, and it even finds proof everywhere. That's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter what belief you have or what story you make up in your mind. You will find proof for every theory you have. It's like, you know, if you go on the internet, you have 5 people, or like, I don't know, hundreds or thousands or millions of people. They can believe A, B, C, D, E, F. Like, you will always find a group, and they get together and they think, I don't know, this is the greatest thing. This is the greatest thing, and you will, whatever. Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? It's crazy.
But often the identification is also based on a feeling that you had. For example,
Exactly.
If I was afraid of something, I felt it. I didn't think,
Exactly.
okay, now I'm going to be a fearful person. I'm identifying with this. I'm afraid of this. I felt it once, so.
And that's.
Oh, I like chocolate. I liked it. Like, it was good. So then I.
And that's why it's so tricky, you know, because that's the thing. At the end of the day, the question is, what do you rely on, which tells you this is the truth? And you know, usually we take thoughts that's very close to us. So we listen to our thoughts, we listen to our feelings, we listen maybe to what authorities say or to what other people say. But yeah, the feelings and the thoughts is the closest to us. So the challenge is, and I heard the sentence once, I really liked it, is, you know, it's an art to be able to entertain a thought that is not yours, or that you don't agree with. Meaning, and that's, I think, the ability in a way to be able to see that maybe the feelings and the thoughts are not our navigation system, but maybe that's just another cloud. But if we are identified as the feeling and as the thought, then this is all there is, and then we have to listen to them. But when we see that we cannot even perceive them, that means we have to be different from them. And that's the art, you know. It's like let's say a fear coming. We are never that fear, you know. It's also a feeling, but we are not that fear. But I think, I don't know, some people who are maybe depressed, they identify so much with that fear they may be even sad when it goes away, because they don't want it to go away actually. Like, you know, it has, on a higher level, yes, but on that level they have become so used to that they would feel naked or not themselves anymore if it leaves. That's why it has the power to stay even for weeks or months or years, you know. So yeah, that's you know, that's the question, is how do we say something is real and something not? And we usually use thoughts and feelings, but it's good to have the ability to even see that those are maybe not how we make up reality.
We can't. Actually, we can't, because if they are not me, I cannot be sure whether it's true or not true. If I rely on my thoughts, what I perceive as my thoughts.
I mean, if you think about your like everyone has sort of a self-image, or everyone has, you know, or there's an image of others about us, like, and it's important, I think, to understand that we are not that. Even the image we have about ourselves or others, we're never that image. So we can never take a picture of who we are, because it changes all the time anyway. As you said, you know, so many factors, everything's changing constantly, whatever. But so yeah, that's the thing. We can never grasp what we are, who we are, and yeah.
But I think if someone is in fear, he has really a reaction, and he cannot make this step. And fears are coming often from the subconscious that you cannot control like this. I think it feels insecure to say I cannot take the feelings like my orientation, because you are here in this body, and your senses help you to orientate and to go away if it's a danger, or they are helping you, or your feelings.
I think I differentiate between feelings and something I would call, I don't know, something else, I don't know, intuition or something else. Like, okay, for me, for instance, let's say but you know, it's a different level, but let's say for me a navigation could be something gives me energy or doesn't give me energy, or something gives me energy or something takes energy away. But I think that's a different thing than a feeling, because, you know, let's say in this case a feeling or emotion is something like fear, sadness, happiness. This is like emotions, and I think those, they are also in a way navigators, because yeah, in a way as well, but I think, as I said, what is more like a navigator for me is, let's say I'm around people, I feel like I have more energy afterwards, or I'm around people where I feel like I don't have so much energy. For me, that's a navigation, you know. But yeah.
I totally agree, because I got up. But I was just, once I made an exercise of Byron Katie, you know it? To answer your thing, and it was just like, okay, I had really a fixed idea about something, and then I did this method for 10 minutes, like, question it, huh? Do you really think this? How would the world be, something like that, if you saw it with an exact contrary idea? And I still kept my idea, but it opened a little door, like, gave me some kind of air into it.
And that's beautiful.
I mean, that's what that's what you're saying.
You know,
I don't say you should do it, but maybe with ideas or feelings that are ruining your life, maybe it's worth a try.
Yeah, it's like, you know, almost like this analogy of, let's say you have a nut, and you know, and let's say somebody hits on it and it cracks open a bit, and it's sometimes a good thing, because then the light comes in, you know, and sometimes it needs a big hammer, or sometimes it comes out automatically or something, but this crack is a good thing, because then something opens up, you know.